My roommate and I booked in March.
Welcome, everyone.
She's March 1st.
We're going to go ahead and get started. Many of you know our presenter this morning, Bonnie Sarah Spencer, previous rector here at St. Paul's. I get the privilege of being in a wellness group with Bonnie on a regular basis that she facilitates, so I continue to.
Because we're not well yet.
No. There's always the hope. But anyway, Bonnie is going to share with us today, as mentioned in the announcements, about her pilgrimage that she co-led in the spring of this year, and was quite powerful. I've gotten to hear from her and from one of the members in another member in our wellness group that went with her, and then also about another pilgrimage coming up next year. So we're really glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
Y'all can pass those around. They're just different bits and pieces from. But before we dig in, I'm gonna pray. And this is, some of you probably know this book, Black Liturgies. And if you don't, it's fantastic, by Cole Arthur Riley. And this is, we're not quite at the dawn, but this is your prayer for dawn. God, at dawn, you have carried us through the long passage of night and into another morning. Awaken us now to today's sacred potential. Grant us imagination for community, wonder, and the kind of work that honors and doesn't degrade us. Place a soothing hand over all who are anxious, that even in the unknown, they would journey into the day grounded and at peace in the arms of the divine. And as we depart from this place in a little bit, protect each of us as we risk ourselves again on living. Glory to the one who resurrects us daily. Amen.
Amen.
Hello, Joe. I thought I'd just start out about how this pilgrimage came to be, and kind of what we did, and talk a little bit about it. There are just going to be slides running in the background. There's probably about 100 of them, and I'm going to talk about each one for 10 minutes, and then I might point to some, or if you have questions. I really want, I'm more of the casual kind of gal, so feel free to stop me, or if you just see something on the screen that you are dying to know about, just flag it and we'll. As some of you know, the Episcopal Diocese in Colorado has sponsored pilgrimages for a while to places like the Camino and some of the Celtic places in Spain, and France and England and Scotland. And while those are lovely, I have been wanting to see pilgrimages to places in our own country and about our own history. And so I just decided to do that with my friend Anne Knorr. And some of you might know Anne, right? And Anne and I have been over the. Oh yeah. Sorry, that's it. We're just walking home from dinner. The woman in the baseball cap. Okay, that's the only one with sound. Can we turn that off for the next time around? Yeah, that scared the. Anne and I have been, we took Soul to Souls Facing Racism class. We went to Race Talk University at Shorter AME Church in Denver. We've done a lot of reading, and we were like, let's do something more. And Anne's worked for years on the Conference for World Affairs, if you're familiar with that, out of the University of Colorado, and the Race in America section. And the other place that I really realized that racial justice was what the last third of my life was to be about was at the Wild Goose Festival, and we can blame Weltha for that because she introduced me to that. So we went for 4 days, 4 nights in April, and we're going to go again in April. I have a save the date, and I can take names and numbers if people are interested. And pilgrimage is can be a walking thing, it can be a visiting thing, it can be sitting at home thing, but it's a journey, and it's about transformation and change. And so even though we just went to Alabama, there is a lot that goes on in us when we see the reality of our history and our life together. So, so that's why I felt called, and Anne and I felt called to do this. Anne actually lives in Boulder, is a retired architect and a spiritual director. And a couple of things that happened that were amazing and sort of serendipitous. So Felicia mentioned Preston Porter Jr., and he was not quite 16, and his birthday is in April, and he was lynched in November. So he was 4 months before his 16th birthday in 1900. He was lynched, and so his birthday was April 25th, and the Colorado Lynching Memorial Project which works with the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, which Felicia's got the book there and we're passing it around. And all these photos are when we took soil from the site of the lynching to the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. We worked with the Colorado Lynching Memorial Project, and there's a picture of Preston, and there's the dirt from Colorado in a plastic jar, and we're transferring it into a glass jar. There were 3 people from the Colorado Lynching Memorial Project. We were just there to bear witness. They did all the work, collected the soil from outside of Lyman. It was the lake station of the train. It's not there anymore. It's the land is owned by a rancher who wouldn't let them on the land to collect soil. So they did it near. And then the other soil was collected from the site of the old Denver City Jail, which, if you know Denver, it's at 14th and Larimer. It's a University of Colorado building now. And there's a marker there now for Preston Porter. It's about that tall and about that big, and it tells his story. So he was taken to the Denver City Jail and accused of killing a gal named Louise Frost. He did not. He was his brother and his dad, and he were coming to Denver. They worked on the railroad. His dad needed to cash his paycheck, and nobody would cash it in Lyman. And so they arrested him in Denver. They put Preston in a sweat box for 4 days, no food or water, brought him out, hit him a bunch, and told him, and he also had a closed head injury, and told him that if he didn't confess, they would kill his dad and his brother. And then about 200 people showed up at the jail when they said they were going to send him back to Lyman for trial, and said, please don't. And they did. And at the lake station, the crowd came. Someone had given him a scripture, a Bible, and he was holding a page in his hand. And they made him sit at the station while they waited for the train from Hugo and Pueblo and other places. And then they burned it. And he yelled, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And there are story after story after story like Preston's. And so we had the privilege of being able to bear witness to the ceremony at the National Memorial for Peace and Justice while we were transferring the soil. Having trouble there?
Yeah,
Right.
sorry,
It's okay.
I can't turn off the volume on that without turning off the volume on you.
Oh, well, then just
You
maybe.
might just have to interrupt it.
Okay.
I also can't figure out how to get rid of it.
Okay, probably don't have editing abilities.
Oh, that's probably it.
That's fine. So as we're transferring the soil, our tour guide, Wanda Battle, who grew up in Montgomery and still lives in Montgomery, started singing Precious Lord. And it was just, I can't even describe the experience of feeling like Preston's at rest and with his ancestors and all of that, but to be able to actually remember him, honor him. He'll have a jar of soil there at the Lynching Memorial. And then we have another jar, and we're working on either Colorado History Museum or the Blair Caldwell Library, which is one of 3 African-American research libraries in the country. And there's also an exhibit at the Boulder Museum right now of the history of African-Americans in Colorado, and Preston is a part of that. So that's one thing we did. And his birthday is the 25th, and so we left on the 24th so that we could do this ceremony on his birthday. So we went to Montgomery, and we did that. Are you familiar with Brian Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative? So he has done all of this work and the Equal Justice Initiative. And so we went to the memorial. We went to the Freedom Rides Museum, and I put down some dates here. The Freedom Ride Museum, the Freedom Ride was actually, I was born during the Freedom Rides. May 4th, 1961 is when they started. And before that was the bus boycott. And so at the Freedom Ride Museum, it's the old bus depot. And the bus boycott was December 5th, 1955 to December 20th, 1956. People in Montgomery boycotted the buses because it was horrible. Oh, Black folk in Montgomery. Like they'd pay their ticket, they weren't allowed to get in on the front of the bus. And so by the time they walked to the back, the bus would take off. No air conditioned in their section of the bus station. I could go on and on, but I won't. And so the bus boycott came first, which was actually a response to Rosa Parks, who on December 1st, 1955 said, I'm just tired and I'm not. And so over that was 55 to 56, and then Freedom Ride was 61. It still was not integrated, but that was more. It went from where did it start? Washington, and went down to Louisiana. So, but Montgomery, it took almost 11 months to get the bus companies to agree, and the city government. People were. Black folk were meeting people and taking them to work. It's West Montgomery. It's a long way to where most of these folks were working, and they all had to walk. And so then people started driving them, and then the government said, well, you can't do that. You don't have a license to be a taxi. And they're like, we're doing it. I mean, just on and on for 13 months. So the Freedom Ride Museum talks about that, and then the bus boycott and all those kinds of things. We visited Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, which is where Dr. King was serving in Montgomery. It's really the only parish he served at, because after that he kind of got swallowed up into the civil rights movement and couldn't do parish ministry. They had a gentleman there named Vernon Johns before him, and they said Vernon Johns was too radical for them. So, and let's talk over it. So part of what's amazing, our tour guide, scattered. We hired a company to work for us, and I'm glad we did it. But in hindsight, it's again white folk making money off of Black folk, and so we're not going to use that tour company. We're going to use our tour guide who grew up in Montgomery and lives in Montgomery. Her grandfather cut Mr. Parks's hair, and we're going to use the local transportation. So that's a good thing. And we're just learning as we go along how it's still not great in Montgomery, even though they're telling a lot more of the truth. So we went to Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and we got a tour of the parsonage. So those of you who know Dr. King's story and him sitting at his kitchen table at midnight, we were able to be in that kitchen, different table, but still, it's quite an amazing experience to stand where he stood. They still have some part of the front porch where one of those pipe bombs came in that they didn't repair, and the church was originally where slave auctions were and holding pens in Dexter Avenue, and their first service in the sanctuary was in 1889 on Thanksgiving Day. So, and then Brian Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative also put together a legacy museum. So there's the Memorial to Peace and Justice, and there's stories like this all over. And then the things are hanging, they're like marble slabs, and they're by either county or state, depending. And then all the names are on it, and the counties underneath. You start eye level, and then you go down and realize you're looking up. All these. There they all are. It's quite stunning. If a county has, or a state has 5 or less, then they're all on one slab, just the names of the states. And so even though Colorado probably has 6 or 7, we're on the slab with 5 or less. And we were able to see that. I spent 9 years as a kid in North Carolina. I went to the county that I grew up in. You can kind of go to see, you know, they're all, and these are the jars of soil. And that's the folks from the Colorado Lynching Memorial Project. And that gentleman on the right is Joe Vaughn, and he is the poet laureate of Aurora, teaches in the public school, is a wrestling coach. And I think that poem in front of Joe to Preston, he wrote that and recited it at them. It's astonishing. So that, and then we went the next day to the Legacy Museum, which is a history. So my wife, Catherine, I call her at the end of the day. She says, "How was your day?" And I'm like, "Well, I went from 1619 to George Floyd in 2 hours." It is an unbelievable museum. And it takes you, and a lot of it's interactive. It starts with the transatlantic slave trade, and then the American slave trade, and then slavery here, Civil War, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, mass incarceration. Yeah, and so one of the things I learned, I was going to give you a little quiz today. So if you were an African American and wanted to vote in Alabama, here's the questions that you would have to answer. Ready? Oh, and you go in there and there's a gallon jar of jelly beans. First question, how many jelly beans are in the jar in front of you? Not kidding. Can you believe that? How many bubbles? No. That's a good, probably not. No, they did. How many bubbles are in a bar of soap? How many seeds are in a watermelon? This is no joke. Yeah. Yep. 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 How many windows can be counted at the White House in Washington, D.C.? So anyway, you just see a lot. In the mass incarceration section, they have holographs. You go like you're visiting a person who's incarcerated, and you pick up the phone, and they pick up the phone, and there's a holograph, and they tell you their story. By then, I could only listen to one because I'd already, you know. So we learned we learned a lot from this past trip about pacing and how much time we need at spaces. So that was some of what we did in Montgomery. And then we went to Birmingham, and we went to 16th Street Baptist Church. I love this t-shirt. And this was, let's see, just this past week, or not quite, September 15th, 1963, just before they were about ready to start the 11 o'clock service. 22 sticks of dynamite went off on the sidewalk and killed those 4 little girls. And so we were able to walk through the church. They have a marker at the sidewalk. What's amazing about it is that there was a guy, Bill Baxley, who heard about it, went to law school, became the attorney general in Alabama. And it took him until 1977 to get the first guy convicted. The second 2 guys, it was 4 people, were convicted in 2000. And the 4th one died in 1994. So it's just astonishing. And then across the street is a park now with an unbelievable memorial to the 4 girls. And then across the street from the church is the Civil Rights Museum. And so we spent time there. And that's more about segregation, what it looked like. It has one of the buses from the Freedom Ride where they threw a bomb at it, is in that museum. Yeah. And then let's see what else we did. Well, that's probably enough for now. We did not have time to go to Selma, but when we go back next April, we're going to add that as an optional morning, the last day, if people want to go. Questions? I'll stop. Questions? Yeah.
What was the museum? I missed what you mentioned, the museum that you told your friend that you.
Oh, from 1619 to George
Yeah,
Floyd.
yeah.
It's called the Legacy Museum.
Legacy.
And that's the other picture book going around.
In
And
Montgomery.
yeah, so it's all part of the Equal Justice Initiative. They also have, we also went down to the waterfront. You can go down there, you walk through the tunnel that the slaves walked through. And so the Equal Justice Initiative has done some things there. And then they've also built a sculpture park along the waterfront, which was closed when we were there because they were adding some new sculpture things. So we will be able to go to that.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, there is. I went, it's just so weird. Some of you know, I like to jog in the morning. And so I went the first morning and I went early because we started kind of early. And there I'm going by this place and there's a plaque and it was the first White House of the Confederacy. They had moved it there, but it was the actual house. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah.
In Kentucky, hasn't it?
I don't remember. So Peter Munson went. He is a priest in the diocese. Kim Seidman from St. Tim's went, and her son. If you've been seeing that 10-year-old, I have to just give you a few of his quotes. We set an intention. We asked people to set an intention every day. And we had morning prayer and evening prayer. We had an altar. We had a lot from Black liturgies. We tried to give a lot of space for processing. And then, so we're going around sharing our intention. And Robbie says, and he's 10. I think he's 11 now, but he was 10. He said, I want to know how two people from different sides can read the same Bible and be the way that they are. And then on the last day, he said, I know I can't change the past, but I can change the future. Gives me hope. Gives me hope. Yeah.
I would say that what would be the ratio of blacks to whites there at present day?
I should know that, but I don't.
You say there were an abundance of people of color there, or were they rare,
Well, the west side of town, yes. The downtown, it's still pretty segregated. And, most of the African Americans I saw were at the hotel serving and those kinds of things. Still. Yeah. Although super interesting, a lot of young Black men and women at the museums and as guides and docents and whatever, lovely, learned a ton from them, always eager to help and talk and share. And Montgomery is really trying. There's plaques like that everywhere in the town, telling you what happened and here's what happened here, and that's a good thing. So
we have a lot of interactive signs like that between Selma and Montgomery also.
good.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see that
It's a
next
pilgrimage
time.
of it.
Yeah.
So what's the name of this art installation? Is it the Legacy or?
The National Memorial for Peace and Justice is what often folks refer to as the lynching memorial.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say it's not, it's an outdoor museum.
And it's connected with the Legacy?
Well, it's all done by the Equal Justice Initiative.
And is that at all connected to the other civil rights memorial or something that I think the Southern Poverty Law Center's put up with the wall of tolerance?
No.
Is that nearby or?
I don't know. I didn't see it.
It's the one that's got
The water,
the water relief on the outside.
Yeah.
Waters of Justice.
Yeah. Yeah, and so does the Legacy Museum actually, has
Oh.
that wall.
So the Legacy Museum is pretty new as well,
Right.
isn't it?
Right.
Oh, I wonder if they incorporated that.
I don't know, it doesn't sound like it.
But yeah, most of this stuff that we saw was through the Equal Justice Initiative. And that's a picture across, it's the walk around the National Memorial is about a mile total if you see all the outdoor stuff. So, and there's, things to read, and there were 17 of us that went from a whole about 10 different Episcopal churches in Colorado. And you can see how they're hanging down. And Calvin Kilberg, he's the 3,000 people. He was lynched in Pueblo in 1900. And so the Colorado Lynching Memorial Project is the next person we want to focus on is Calvin. And we were able to, we met a woman because his soil is already there. And they were like, how did that all happen? There is a woman who lives in Windsor, actually, who read about Calvin, and God just laid on her heart she needed to do something. She got in touch with the Equal Justice Initiative. They didn't really have their community remembrance project set up yet, where you have to have a process and work with people from the town. And she just went down to Pueblo. They sent her the coordinates. She collected a jar of soil and she shipped it to the museum. So, and there's his other marker. So what we are trying to do in Colorado is on that one, you can see near the top, is now we would like to get some contacts in Pueblo. We're working on contacts in Lyman. I went out to Lyman 2 weeks ago to meet with some folks. There's more interest in the town than there was, so that's exciting. And now we're working on trying to get some contacts in Pueblo. We've met with this gal who got the soil. Because on the Colorado Lynching Memorial website, there's Preston's story, then we'll put Calvin's story, and we'll put Washington Wallace's story. He was lynched outside of La Junta. And then there's one in Uray, actually, so near Telluride, where my family is, so that might be next. So that's kind of...
Well, I'm waiting for someone in Longmont. They say it was really bad there.
I don't know, you can look on the Lynching Memorial website and you can look at the museum. It's not listed, but that doesn't mean, these are just known and they have a pretty rigorous documentation process. You don't necessarily have to know the name of the person, but you have to know more details than Grandpa Joe said, not that might not be true. So,
Is there any time in Colorado? That's on Highway 34, just east of Greeley. And it's a farming community. It was African American farming thrived and
now they're,
yeah, there's I know there was some work at the state level to sort of protect the existing buildings.
They've done that with Pine Cliff, right?
Yeah.
There was a sort of a African American sort of camp place where folks could go to the mountains and be safe, and and all of that's documented in the Boulder Museum right now, their history of African Americans in Colorado. And the Klan was huge here in the 20s, huge. I just finished, if you want to read a harrowing book, I just finished A Fever in the Heartland, which is about the Klan in Indiana, but in the 20s. But what kept coming up, two other states that were most mentioned in that book was Colorado and one other. Stapleton was, big wig in the Klan.
He actually ran for governor, was near governor on the KKK platform.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yep. I mean, what happened?
Like it was a secret.
No, and in Indiana, like the whole government was KKK. It's quite staggering, really. So.
Wow, that's
When is
good.
the next pilgrimage scheduled?
I do. I don't have enough of these, but if people are interested, it's going to be the 23rd to the 27th of April next year, or 28th. There's a save the date. People, we've met with Wanda, who's the tour guide, and people will either be able to come back on Sunday night if they want, or Monday morning. People are going to get there on their own. And then we'll meet at the hotel, and from then on, everybody will be taken care of. And I don't have a cost yet, so we just are getting our act together.
That's the weekend.
It's the week after Easter, and it's also over Preston's birthday, and also it's not going to be unbearably hot quite yet. So,
When my husband was 3 years old, his father took him to a lynching.
Oh,
And he felt guilty his whole life
Yeah.
because he couldn't stop it.
it was like
That
a
was-
family picnic.
Yeah, that was in Brownfield, Texas.
Yeah, they would go after church.
I don't know what day it was. I don't know who it was.
Did you?
Question. I was shocked this summer. I was at John Brown's farm, which is in upstate New York, and we had a bunch of young people from Schenectady area, which is further south. There were so many kids that came that we brought in that knew nothing about what had happened. And I wondered if, in your experience, have you encountered young people who just have no knowledge of what happened to their ancestors, what happened in their world,
Totally.
or is happening still perhaps in this world.
Right, and it's more and more, it's being pulled out of curriculums, and I didn't learn about this in school, a lot of it, So yeah, I mean, it's a both and. I think some people are way more aware, and some people are less.
I wonder if I did because I'm part of the country. I grew up in the Southwest, and so we had the Buffalo Soldiers, so I grew up next to a Buffalo Soldier fort.
Yeah.
So
So,
they fought for the Confederacy. Yeah, that's who they fought for. Because they all get honored by the Confederate people now.
not the ones at Fort Huachuca.
Let me know.
But,
One's in Texas, though.
but we had a lot of the lynchings and the KKK and all that. That was in our curriculum.
We did in Kansas too. Of course, we heard all about Harper's Ferry and all that.
I taught it.
However, nowadays, talking to my 13-year-old granddaughter, they don't do social studies the whole year. So how can you get in all that history if you're not doing it the whole year? I mean, it was hard to fit it in a year, It's ridiculous. Whatever.
The point is to kill off history so you
Yeah.
can make policies
Right.
based on nothing.
Right.
It's hot air.
Yes.
could you talk about these?
Oh, yes. You know what those are?
No.
Okay, I'm so glad you brought that up. Do you have a question?
Let's
Betsy?
do that first.
Okay, so these, and this we did not tour, but we are going to next time. These are the mothers of gynecology.
Oh.
And let's see, I wrote this down somewhere. This was during slave time. There was a doctor, I don't know his name, and I don't really want to know his name. I did look it up, and he is known as the father of my modern gynecology. And the way that he became the father of modern gynecology is that slave girls would be taken to him, and because Black people don't feel pain, he would do his experiments on them. And one gal had like 28, the big one, and I forget her name. I should know her name, but we didn't actually tour this. We just got a picture. And so this woman artist who did these, when she learned about the mothers of gynecology, or these women, girls, really, let's be real. She actually found out where it was. It was a house in Montgomery that someone else was living in. Probably didn't know the history, right? Because this was in the 1850s, 40s, 60s, And she bought the house. The guy sold it to her, lent her the money, and then she paid him back. All these kind of crazy things that happened. And then she made these sculptings, and there's a tour, and you can, so, yeah, so that's, yeah, good for her, and, I just love the mothers of gynecology, you know.
They have their names. Anarcha Westcott,
Yep, that's Anarcha, the big one.
Betsy,
Mhm.
and Lucy.
Yep, thank you, yeah. I could have done that, but it would be rude.
And there's still doctors that believe
Oh, yeah,
that.
totally.
Black women feel no pain.
Right. I mean, that's part of the disparity in our healthcare. So that's the mothers of gynecology. Yes.
Kind of leads into my question is, you had like, it seems like a tsunami of pain, awakening maybe.
Uh-huh.
Just, wow, how'd you guys deal with that?
Well,
On a
it's,
daily basis?
it's a
week.
good
It's
question.
not 2 days,
It
it's
was-
not an hour, it's
Right.
a week.
we had journals that we gave everybody. My friend Anne's very creative. We had an altar set up in the hotel, and we had morning prayer and evening prayer. We had a closing Eucharist. We also talked about how, like the morning that we did the ceremony for Preston, we went out for a barbecue for lunch, and it was amazing. And I think you just have to, we have to remind ourselves, even sort of back to Lori's sermon, right, that as Richard Rohr would say, between Jesus's outstretched arms on the cross, everything is held. And so the joys and the sorrows. And so we wept, and then we went out and ate amazing fried okra and barbecue. And I didn't have any collard greens, but we had a beer. You know, it's just, but we had space. And that's part of what Anne and I tried to do. And we had a little worship booklet, and we were going to go to there's an Episcopal church across the street from the hotel, and we were going to go on Sunday for Eucharist, but we just decided that, you know, for our group, it was just lovely. We had our own Eucharist and closure together, and we got together beforehand on Zoom, and then we, after the pilgrimage, about 2 months later, we met for kind of a lunch reunion at the Marker at 14th and Larimer, and then went for some good New Orleans food at Nola Jane's down there. So, you know, but no, it's not, it took me at least a week at home before I could even, you know, all I could do was my puzzles, honestly, you know, and a few other things, go hiking, try to, you know, so. Yeah, it's a great question. It's true.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Those of us who were born and raised in the South,
Mhm.
we just found that was the way
Mhm.
things were.
Right.
Well, as you were a little kid, okay. But there were very few where I was born in Cherokee County, North Carolina. I had some teachers who taught me that, but of course that came on as I matured.
Mhm.
And I got away from things that are the obvious things that you've been talking about. I wasn't born in the 1700s or 1800s, but I was born in 1939. So I absorbed an awful lot, but it made no sense to me. And then I met this guy, and he came down from Delaware, and I was in Chattanooga at the time. And we met in a Methodist church, and we had the best history teacher that you could ever have.
And he put us on a track. This is the guy who taught history, and tell them about what happened in Chattanooga.
Well, first of all, I want to ask a question of everybody.
How many?
How many have actually experienced segregation situations? Okay. My first experience was when I took the train from Delaware down to Athens, Tennessee, which is between Chattanooga and Knoxville. Got off the train and I walked into the station, and here's a sign for whites only, for blacks,
Or colored.
Colored.
well,
Well,
colored. And the difference was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, in Chattanooga, when I was teaching, they decided to integrate the schools. They did the faculty first. So I was one of those teachers, white teachers, integrated an all-black school. I was the only white teacher in that school. And it was for 3 years.
Wow.
I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. But that's what the situation was.
and then we moved to Chicago. Well, there, as I was looking at this book, in Colorado, that's what you were talking about. It wasn't just in the South,
Oh, no.
it was everywhere
It was.
and still is. And so, what we did in Chicago is that I worked in Black communities and absorbed so much of what is going on in the West Side and South Side. So you learn how awful it is.
What time are we ready to?
Oh, we usually get about 11:30.
Okay, I'm just checking. Okay. Yeah, and part of the idea for me, there's a lot I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know, right? We don't know until we get there. And then also, part of what we do in response is, so we talked about at the end of the pilgrimage, what's one thing that each of us can do? I mean, and if there's a group from one particular church, what can we do? Or, and I came home for myself and said, I think I need to join the Colorado Lynching Memorial Project. And they didn't have any, I think it's good to have a clergy person on that. And most of these folks are not faith. I mean, they have faith, but they're not churchgoers, let's put it that way, which is great, it doesn't matter. But, and other folks made other decisions about what they were going to do. And we shared that, and we prayed for each other, and those kinds of things. So, yeah, because whether we were there or not, right? 1700s, none of us were. It's in our DNA. And I've been surprised that rears its head for me, being from a Jewish background, and my whole family is Jewish, and none of them had issues in the Holocaust, but it's still in our DNA, right? And so, and it's also a complex topic at the moment. So
Yes.
And just for the record, I'm not one of those folks who says Israel can do no wrong. But that's another Sunday school class. Yeah, or series.
One comment about slavery in the United States. It's unique in that the slavery of a people, never before Think about that.
No.
And it harms us all.
Yes, it does. I mean, and that was the brilliance of Dr. King and Gandhi and so many of the teachers of nonviolence, Howard Thurman. It's just, don't, if I hate my enemy, then I'm becoming what I hate. So that's definitely the hard part. There was another slide of the gas. You don't have to go to it. I thought might have seen the Gaston Motel. That's actually in Birmingham, and it's. I don't think we're going to go back because it's Gaston Motel, Mothers of Gynecology. But Mr. Gaston was a very wealthy Black man who really tried to help the Black community, and he had none of the places where Black folk could go were air conditioned and those kinds of things. He built this hotel. It was air conditioned. It was top of the line for the day. And also he allowed Black and white folk to meet. And so that's where Dr. King would meet with Ralph Abernathy and other white folks who wanted to participate. So and so they have the balcony where King spoke from, and then the tables where all of them would meet. And it's actually part of the national parks now. And so we had two young women who are park rangers tell us some of the story. And so that was also kind of cool. Maybe I'll tell one more story. This is, did some of you see this piece of stained glass? This is from 16th Avenue Baptist Church. Cars were thrown across the street when that TNT went off, and all the stained glass came. So this window is at the back of the church, above. It's got a choir loft, and it's back there. And this stained glass artist in Wales heard about what happened, and he decided to collect money from the Welsh people. He said, I don't want any donations bigger than like $1. And he collected all the money to make this piece of stained glass. John Petts is the name of the artist. And he has, and you'll notice in the picture that the Jesus is Black, which is so refreshing. And his right hand is pushing away hatred and violence, and the left hand is offering forgiveness. And there's also some more symbolism in it that I don't remember. The tour guide was talking really fast, but it's it's huge behind the choir loft, so, which is kind of sad.
For different things here, because I found it a few years ago, but it's gorgeous. And
Yeah.
You do unto me is the writing.
Yeah.
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 To these, you do unto me. But yeah, it's really, really nice.
So it's from the Welsh people. So I'm good. Let's pray and go home, unless anyone has any more questions.
There's a book by James Cone called The Cross and the Lynching Tree. That's very
It is.
good to read.
Yeah. Agreed. This is a benediction, and we will close with this. May you practice a sacred reclamation of all this world was made for: dignity, love, belonging, delight. May you nurture your own imagination for repair in all its forms, and expand with self-compassion in the knowledge that no healing is linear and no reparation final. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, y'all. Good to be with you. If anybody wants to save the date, feel free.